Some are tragic, some are purely ridiculous, but all of them are 100% real. Grab a seat, double-check your surroundings, and maybe stay away from falling cows, because these are the 10 deaths that made fate look like it had zero chill. Number 1. The Sky Cow of Brazil, João Maria de Souza. In 2013, João Maria de Souza was living a quiet life in Caratinga, Brazil. It was a Tuesday night, the kind of night where nothing happens. Joel was in bed, sleeping soundly next to his wife. Little did he know, he was about to become the protagonist of the most improbable Final Destination scenario ever recorded. See, Joel's house was built at the base of a steep hill, and on that hill lived a cow. Now, cows aren't known for their mountaineering skills, but this one was feeling adventurous. It wandered off its pasture and stepped onto the asbestos roof of Joel's house. Spoiler alert, asbestos is not designed to support 1,500 pounds of beef. The roof disintegrated. The cow dropped like a furry anvil. It fell 8 feet straight through the ceiling and landed directly on top of Joel. Here is the kicker. His wife, sleeping just inches away, wasn't touched. The cow, completely fine. It stood up, shook itself off, and casually walked out of the bedroom like it was looking for a snack. Joel initially survived the impact, but he passed away later in the hospital from internal injuries. Imagine being the insurance agent or the doctor filling out that paperwork. Cause of death? Spontaneous aerial bovine. It's the kind of death that makes you realize that no matter how much you plan, you are never truly safe from a falling farm animal. Number 2. The Deadly Beard of Braunau. Hans Steininger was the mayor of Braunau am Inn, Austria, in the 16th century. He was a respected leader, a pillar of the community, and the owner of the world's most dangerous facial hair. Hans's beard was 4.5 feet long. To put that in perspective, if he stood next to a toddler, the beard would be taller than the kid. Usually, Hans was a practical man. He kept this magnificent disaster of hair rolled up and tucked into a velvet pocket so he wouldn't trip on it. It worked for years, until the day the world decided to test his agility. In 1567, a massive fire broke out in the town. Panic was everywhere. People were screaming, buildings were burning, and Hans was running for his life. In the chaos, his beard came loose from its pocket. Like a scene from a nightmare, he stepped on his own facial hair while running down a flight of stairs. The momentum sent him flying. He broke his neck instantly. The townspeople were so fascinated by this that they didn't just bury him, they cut off the beard and put it in a museum. It is still there today in the local district museum of Braunau. Let that be a lesson. Grooming isn't just about vanity, it's about survival. Number 3. The Elephant Error, General John Sedgwick. General John Sedgwick was a legend of the American Civil War. He was Uncle John to his men, tough, brave, and seemingly invincible. On May 9, 1864, during the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse, he was directing his artillery. The Confederate sharpshooters were about 1,000 yards away, and they were good. Bullets were whistling past, and Sedgwick's men were understandably ducking for cover. Sedgwick, wanting to show off some of that classic military bravado, stood tall. He laughed at his men's fear. He reportedly yelled out, "Why are you dodging? They couldn't hit an elephant at this distance." He didn't finish the sentence. Seconds later, a bullet struck him right below the left eye. He was the highest-ranking Union officer to die in the war, and he did it while mocking the very idea of his own mortality. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a bayonet. His men, who had been ducking, suddenly realized that dodging was actually a very IQ move. The universe has a funny way of punishing hubris, and Sedgwick's last words remain history's most famous example of catastrophically bad timing. Number 5. The Turtle Head, Aeschylus. Aeschylus is the father of Greek tragedy. He wrote some of the most profound plays in human history. Naturally, his death was a tragedy, but the kind written by a drunk comedian. In 455 BC, Aeschylus was hanging out in Sicily. Now, there's a specific type of eagle in the area that loves tortoises. To get at the meat, the eagle flies high and drops the tortoise onto a rock to crack the shell. Aeschylus was bald, not just a little thin on top, but polished marble bald. An eagle flying overhead looked down, saw Aeschylus's shiny head, and thought, perfect, a rock. The bird released the tortoise right onto the playwright's skull, killed by a falling reptile. The best part? There was a prophecy that Aeschylus would die from a falling object. He was so scared of this that he refused to stay indoors, thinking a roof would fall on him. He spent his time in open fields to stay safe, only to be taken out by a bird's lunch. Number 5. The polite bladder, Tycho Brahe. Tycho Brahe was a 16th century Danish nobleman and one of the greatest astronomers who ever lived. He mapped the stars, he had a fake nose made of gold, long story, and he had a pet moose. He was a man of high status and even higher etiquette. In 1600, he attended a royal banquet in Prague. At some point, he desperately needed to go to the bathroom. But here's the problem. In 1600's court culture, leaving the table before the host was considered an unforgivable insult. So Tycho sat there. For hours, he held it in out of pure politeness. By the time he finally got home, his bladder had essentially ruptured or developed a severe infection. He spent 11 days in agony before dying. He revolutionized our understanding of the heavens, but he was defeated by a dinner party. His last words were, "Let me not seem to have lived in vain." He lived like a genius, but died because he was too polite to say, "I need to pee."
Number 6. The posthumous champion, Frank Hayes. Frank Hayes was a jockey who had never won a race in his life. That changed on June 4, 1923, at Belmont Park. He was riding a horse named Sweet Kiss, a long shot at 20-to-1 odds. Somewhere in the middle of the race, Frank suffered a massive, fatal heart attack. But here is where the absurd part kicks in. He didn't fall off. His body slumped forward, but he stayed firmly in the saddle. Sweet Kiss kept running, fueled by the momentum and the jockey's weight. Sweet Kiss crossed the finish line first. The crowd went wild. It was a miracle victory. The officials ran up to congratulate Frank, only to find that he had been dead for the last several minutes. He is the only jockey in history to win a race while being technically deceased. The victory stood, but Sweet Kiss was never raced again. They called her the Sweet Kiss of Death. Frank finally got his trophy. He just wasn't there to hold it. Number 7. The Cactus Revenge, David Grundman. In 1982, David Grundman and his roommate went out into the Arizona desert to do some cactus plugging. This involves shooting at giant saguaro cacti for fun. David targeted a massive saguaro that was 26 feet tall and over 100 years old. He fired several shots into the trunk. The cactus, which can weigh several tons because it's filled with water, decided it had had enough. A 4-foot arm of the cactus broke off and fell directly on David, crushing him to death. It was the ultimate Newton's third law moment. For every action, there is an equal and opposite cactus falling on your head. Nature doesn't have a sense of humor, but it definitely understands irony. Number 8. The Silent Crowd, Queen Sunananda. This is one of the most frustrating deaths in history. In 1880, Queen Sunananda of Thailand was on a boat trip when the vessel capsized. The queen and her young daughter were thrown into the water. There were dozens of guards and servants watching from the shore. They were strong swimmers. They could have easily saved her. But they did nothing. They stood there and watched their queen drown. Why? Because in Thailand at the time, it was a capital crime for a commoner to touch royalty. If you touched the queen, even to save her life, the punishment was death. The guards were so terrified of the law that they let her die. It was a tragedy of perfect obedience. After her death, the king immediately abolished the law, but the damage was done. Number 9.
The lethal laughter. Calchas. Calchas was a famous Greek seer. He predicted the Trojan War. He was a pro. But one day, another prophet told him he would die on the day he met a superior seer. Calchas eventually met a man named Mopsus. They had a prophecy off. Mopsus won. Calchas, realizing the prophecy of his death was coming true, got nervous. But then, a different version of the story says he had a vineyard. A different prophet told him he'd never drink the wine from it. When the grapes ripened, Calchas held a cup of the wine to his lips. He looked at the other prophet and started laughing at how wrong the prediction was. He laughed so hard he choked and died before the wine ever touched his tongue. The prophecy was right after all. The joke was on him. Number 10. The Tram Tragedy. Antoni Gaudí. Antoni Gaudí was the genius behind the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. He was a man obsessed with beauty and God. By 1973, he was 73 years old and so focused on his work that he neglected his appearance. He looked like a pauper. While walking to his daily confession, he was struck by a tram. Because he looked like a homeless man, nobody rushed to help. Multiple taxi drivers refused to take him to the hospital. He was eventually taken to a clinic for the poor, where the staff didn't recognize him. By the time his friends found him the next day, it was too late. The man who built the most beautiful church in the world died because people judged him by his clothes. Now here is what I need from you. Pick one. If you had to choose an absurd way to go, which one of these stories resonates with you? The sky cow, the lethal beard, or the posthumous horse race? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to see more deep dives into the weirdest corners of history, hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty more stories that prove the truth is way weirder than fiction. Stay safe out there and watch out for eagles carrying tortoises.